Let's move on to the third phase of the game here. Let's talk a little bit briefly about special teams. I thought that this was a reasonable game for special teams. I'll go through some of the highlights and lowlights in my opinion, which are we avoided the kick returns altogether, which quite honestly, after the last game was probably a good idea. So we didn't have any kick returns, but I would like to see whether we're going to go back with Trenton Cannon or whether we're going to move forward in that regard. Joey Sly was serviceable. He hit his extra point. He hit his field goal attempt. Can't ask anything more from my man Sly. Mitch continues to look good, right? Pinned a punt inside the 20, had another long one. The punt returns was an area of opportunity for me. It was underwhelming with Ayuk. He had 2 returns for 6 yards, and he allowed the ball to roll behind him. It was a short kick that landed somewhere around the 20 and then rolled to the 6-yard line on the third drive of the game, pinned the Niners deep. So for me, I had to give the special teams a B- here.
Yeah, I think that's fair. B-. They didn't do anything to really hurt this team, which was an issue last week. And they weren't given very many opportunities to help this team, right? Sly's kick, you said serviceable. He looked better than Gold has as far as the way he kicked that field goal. And, there was 2 opportunities that he could have gotten that maybe were 6 more points that could have been on the board, which may have changed the dynamic of this game, but it's not his job to make that decision, right? So, but he looked strong and he looked accurate, and I think that there was opportunities missed because of it.
Interesting question here. Bryant points out the idea that they didn't utilize Joey Sly enough. And certainly there was a vocal crowd on Twitter expressing that same sentiment, that this was a strange game not to take those points on a couple of drives, even though analytics will typically tell you that you want to go for it on 4th down. This was a departure for Kyle Shanahan, going for it at basically every opportunity on Sunday and failing to convert on the vast majority of them. Wondering what your thoughts are on that idea of going for those 4th down situations, as opposed to a few situations where you could have sent Joey Sly out there and probably would have 6 additional points on the board. Still not enough to sway the game, but a different ending, if you will.
I disagree that it wouldn't have swayed the game because of when those points would have been there.
Fair question.
So we're looking at the final score, but if this was a 7-6 game going into that last drive of the first half, maybe this defense, there's a lot of different scenarios that could have played out if there was points on the board versus just a 0 on the board going into the first half, right? But yeah, I mean, it's perplexing to me. Like, there's no, like, we look for patterns and we look to understand the mentality and what the decision making is of these coaches, right? You look at Bill Belichick and you kind of can tell he's going to play a certain way, right? And I remember when he didn't have a kicker that he trusted, he went for it on every single 4th down. And you understood that.
Right.
Last week, our kicker was our punter. And our punter has never been a kicker ever in his life. And in that scenario, when there's complete room to not trust, because he didn't even know he was going to be a kicker till like 5 minutes before he became the kicker and just went out there and started playing football, right? You took the field goal. You put it in this punter kicker's hands to score points. Okay, look, you stayed true to yourself. Hey, I'm going to take the points if I could get the points. Now this week, you had a kicker. It wasn't a punter / kicker. It was a kicker that was a kicker. And you went for it on every single 4th down.
Oh,
Don't understand, Rob. So to go directly to Bryant Culp, hell yeah, they didn't utilize Joey enough. They didn't utilize him at all. They basically did it when they were forced to kick the ball and get the field goal because it was not close enough to go for it on 4th down. And you just had to get close enough in a 10-point game, get the field goal. But yeah, it could have been completely different. And like Bryant is saying again, every time you score, it shifts the game.
Yes.
That's absolutely true. So going back to your point, yeah, in the grander scheme of things, 6 points doesn't get you a win, but 6 points changes the dynamic of that game. With the way the defense was playing, I think this would have been a much different game if we took the points.
Yeah, you certainly can't just say, hey, it would have been 6 additional points, therefore the game would have turned out 17-16. To your point, that it would have changed the outcome of the game. It would have changed the way in which the game was played. And I think that the point I take from what you just said there that is most compelling to me is the erratic nature of the calls there. The idea that the week prior, when it would have made sense to go for it on all those 4th down and kicking scenarios, you decided to kick. And then this week, where the game felt a hell of a lot closer and was the style of game where points matter, now you decide to open it up. And it just does not seem to jive with common sense. It doesn't seem, it screams of someone who's feeling somewhat desperate, who isn't sure what play they should be making here, thinking, well, should I maybe, I'll do this, right? And just acting erratically. That does seem to be the feel of it. It's unfortunate.